welcome to episode 54 of the Narrative Wargamer Podcast. I am Tony Rhodes, and tonight I'm joined by Daniel Foley.
Hello again, it's me. All right.
And hello again, it's me, because it's been, nearly 6 months, I think, at this point.
A million
Since
years.
The last time
it's
we
been 40,000 years into the future.
I don't think it's quite been that long. But yeah, it has been a while, and I'm very conscious every time I say that on this show. It's something that I've said many times before. But no, there's been good reason for it. So welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to the Narrative Wargamer Podcast. It is good to be back. We've been on a sort of a brief hiatus as life has been very busy, and we've been deciding on sort of taking the show in a slightly new direction moving forward, which hopefully will soon become evident. So for long-time listeners of the show, and particularly to our patrons, this will seem somewhat familiar to some of our casual conversations, bonus episodes that we've done in the past. So the idea is that, first of all, if you're watching this on YouTube, that's one of the first big changes, is the fact that the show is now on YouTube. And although Dan has yet to see them, I'm
a little bit worried. That's an understatement. I'm incredibly worried about the photo that I'm sure there's some sort of GDPR regulation that's being broken here about me having my face on YouTube somewhere, probably.
I'm sure it's fine, but yes, you'll be able to see some lovely pictures of our faces on screen right now, and so if you're listening on the podcast formats normally, then yeah, obviously you won't see any of this, but you're not missing a great deal. It's basically just we're putting the podcast out there now on YouTube as well. So hello to our YouTube viewers and listeners. And yeah, basically we've got some nice new graphics, and you've probably just heard some nice new intro music as well.
Ooh. I'm gonna make it up. Do narrative wargamers. We like wargaming with a narrative edge on it. Boo boo do.
And now what Dan doesn't know is I'm going to use that.
Yep, that's it. And I better get royalties as well. I want all the royalties.
But yeah, so we're sort of, we're revitalizing the podcast a little bit, bringing it into the new sort of like chapter for Narrative Wargamer, and yeah, so we're now on YouTube. Nice new facelift to the show, nice new music track courtesy of Dan. There will, of course, be some returning favourites. Dan has insisted that if the podcast is to continue, we still do, of course, do some fun facts episodes.
It's written into my contract.
Yeah, the fun facts episodes will be making a return. I love producing those, and they'll still be a big thing on the show, really, because they're one of my favourite things to do.
Good laugh.
But tonight, for the sort of first instalment, as it were, of our new format, we're going to, of course, be talking about 10th edition 40k, because it has now landed, and I know at least I've managed to play one game. I'm assuming, Dan, you've said you've played a game or two?
I've played 3 games as of recording.
As of recording?
Yeah, as of recording, because I know I'm playing one on Saturday as well, so...
I don't necessarily think this will be out by Saturday, but who knows? Hopefully, there's a chance it might be. I don't know at this point. The plan is these should be a bit quicker to produce and edit as well, which means more regular content, hopefully.
Hooray.
So more conversation, more 40k, more fun. So yeah, that's basically the sort of general gist of where we're going to be at. So hopefully these will start going out regularly on YouTube. They'll continue to go out on all the podcast aggravators. Not aggravators, no.
Aggravators? Those aggravating... They sit there and go, ooh, just wind you up.
Those podcasts.
All those podcasts. Ooh, how dare they.
All the places that you get your podcasts, be it Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Podbean, where this is originally hosted and all the rest of it. But yeah, we'll have our usual selection of guests on. It's just Daniel tonight, but we will, of course, be rejoined at some point by Red Tooth and Dave and a couple of others as well. I think Adam is going to be making a return at some point.
Yeah, I like to think like a Carnifex in 4th edition, I count as unit strength of 10.
Dan has It Will Not Die. He will not go away.
Yeah. Though I definitely feel pain. Definitely, there's a lot of pain to be felt. It definitely happens.
Well, yeah, so with that, I guess we'll just launch into it, really, because, as I say, it's going to be more casual, more sort of freeform, and yeah, tonight we're going to start, at least, by talking about some of our first and early impressions of 10th edition 40k. So, what do you think, Dan? Do you like it? Better or worse?
It's all right. Yeah, it's okay. Now, I am, so far, 3 games in. There are some things I like, there are some things I don't like, and there are some things I'm indifferent about, which is probably puts me to a T of how to describe 40k. So I can start with things I like, I can start with things I don't like. What would you like me to start with?
Why don't we start with some of the things we do like?
Okay. Let's start with points being power levels with extra steps. Let's go with that.
Yeah, to be fair, that is one of my not only like favorite changes, but also just really amused changes, because it's almost like that's what we've been doing for literally years now at this point already.
I really enjoy it because I'm now up to my 20th army list that I've made just for the lols. I really like it. I know there are some downsides to it, and I will come to that in the downsides, but for new people joining, great. For not having random little tiny annoying points left over, great. Although you still can, there's still some issues with some of that. And the my favourite thing is I can make an army list while drinking a cup of tea, and in the time it takes me to eat biscuits, which is a bonus. And I don't have to. Yeah, that's the thing. If I have someone over and I want to play a quick game, it used to take me a good amount of time to write up a list that I was not happy with, but just sort of that I thought, this will be fun. Whereas now, it's so quick. And can I add, the app is good! Hooray! The app is good! The app works! It works! I know it's like tangential, but it works. And it's not rubbish. There's a few tiny mistakes, but it's not rubbish.
Yeah, I have to say, like, honestly, one of my favourite new things about the edition is actually using a 40k official app that works really quite nicely, and not using Battle Scribe. Like, it's done as proud it has as Battle Scribe, but it sounds like it might be at the end of life for that service. Especially if the app is going to be.
Yeah, I have been hearing rumblings. Yeah, I have been hearing rumblings. I would also like to put the cynical point in me is actually, I think the reason why they changed the points levels to the way they are, it's got nothing to do with balance. It's got nothing to do with making more money. It's got nothing to do with any of that. I think it's because they couldn't design an app properly, and using multiples of 5 and 10 was easier. That's the only reason why I think they've done it. It's like, we can't design an app. Well, let's just make everything multiple 5s and 10s. It makes things easier.
All the point system is because it's easier to code.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly why, I think. I have no proof, and you can believe me or not, but that's what I think.
But yeah, I have been pleasantly surprised by the app. Now, I know that at this point, the list builder feature is sort of like in free beta, as it were, and it's not going to be free indefinitely. Yeah. But I'm hoping that it gets rolled into as part of the Warhammer Plus subscription.
I think it is. I think it is.
If it does, I think that will make the Warhammer Plus subscription really worth it now. Like, I know there's some people who have been dropping off it in the last 6 to 12 months. To be honest, myself, I've sort of contemplated I don't think it actually is up and running for me at the moment, but I know I'm meaning to resubscribe at some point. But if resubscribing gets me the 40k app, fully unlocked once it's out of its free trial period, then yeah, I'm definitely going to be picking it up again, I think.
Not that I want to get on a massive rant about Warhammer Plus, but I think the problem with people think about Warhammer Plus is they think they're getting more than they. It's a matter of perspective. If you're happy with paying the amount for a nice model and occasionally getting animations and like a vault of stuff, then wicked. But if you're purely doing it for one thing, it's not worth it.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that in the sense that, funnily enough, the thing I've enjoyed the most out of it, I think, is actually the Lore Masters series. I really enjoy listening to the Lore Masters series, but I don't need to be listening to that on a month-by-month basis. I can just let them build up, and then I've resubscribed and I've got a couple of months backlog of Lore Masters. Great, that's a couple of hours of content for me to listen to.
I mean, I have a slight issue with Lore Masters, as in I can't get through an episode without falling asleep because that man's voice is like treacle. But yeah, in a good way. Like, he's not boring. It's just that man's voice is like treacle, and it's very soothing, especially if you've got a headache. Useful. Anyway, back to 10th. So I knew this was going to happen in this new format. I am like a dog in a whatever a dog uses to go mad in. I can't stick to a topic. I'm just going to go over here. Right, okay, over here. Now we're over here. 10th. So good things. That's where we were up to. I very much like the points. I very much like the rules. There have been some teething issues, but that's
to be expected.
But
yeah.
I think the rules are way better. The problem is, and this is what I find with all of the YouTubey, podcasty people who do all these sorts of things, and now I am aware I'm including us.
You say us.
The problem is, this is what happens. The new edition gets released. Everyone goes, this edition's really good. It's really solid. That's great, isn't it? Fantastic. 6 weeks later, the first codex comes out, and everyone then goes, well, I think this is great. This will be how all the codexes come out, and it will be wonderful. I still like it. Roll on 2 years. This is rubbish. All the codexes, they're so hard. This doesn't work. So I fully expect that to happen with this edition as well, because it's not really the rules that make the game. It's the codexes in that respect. But
yes. Yeah, I have to say that is one thing that I think I've got the impression of is that most people, or there's been this shift where it's like, it's easy to forget this is actually an index version of the game.
Yeah.
Because it is actually quite a fleshed out index version of the game. Yeah. And really, this is just, we're in holding pattern at the moment. Like you say, 12 months' time, we'll be in that position where, 6-8 codexes will be out. That roadmap, I think,
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to throw out a prediction here. I don't think the units are going to change much. I think what's going to change is the detachments.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's. I think the data sheets will mostly be the same. It'll be new units and maybe some tweaks to a couple of data sheet abilities, maybe or weapons. Yeah. But the most part is they'll be basically the same. And it's going to be the detachments that come out that's going to be the real changer.
Yeah, and I'm intrigued because that's where I feel like... I mean, also, I'm super happy about that. That's another thing. I'm coming to another super happy thing I'm happy about, which is going back to a conversation we had months ago, Tony, which is I can now make an orc army with all the different clan cultures in and not give a monkeys about what anyone says. Not that I would anyway, but I don't feel bad about having... Bad Moons, Goths, Snake Bites, Death Skulls, Blood Axes, and the other ones.
Yeah.
All in the same army. Because it's an orc army, it should. And anyone who disagrees with me is wrong. And yeah, I'm that person now. But I like that. I like the ability that I can have my Cadians with my Krieg. I can have, if I really wanted to, I could do an old school 2nd edition Space Marine army where I have a Crusade and I have some Imperial Fists and some Ultramarines and this all in the same data sheet, and just use them as generic Space Marine Chapter A, and it doesn't matter, which I quite like. So yes, that's another thing I like. Is there anything you like?
Yeah. Well, so I do like that a lot. Like, I like the fact that, you know, to use Space Marines as the example, you'll be able to field a Ultramarines bike mounted army and use a detachment that gives you rules for using fast units, you know, using bikes and stratagems relevant to them without having to be White Scars, for example. But then equally, White Scars, if they want, could rock up with like a Devastator, you know, focused detachment and have all sort of like heavy weapons and so on. Just, you know, it gives players a bit more agency with their collections.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm looking forward to the infantry platoons, the heavy weapon detachments, the armored fist detachments. Admittedly, and I know this is going to sound as great, but admittedly, I'm not looking forward to the 2 months I'll be able to play with it before the edition changes again. But I'm not going to forgive them for that. They've done it to me twice. They did it to me with Skitarii when the first Skitarii book came out, and now they've done it to me with this, and it really annoys me. I was going to say a rude word then, but I didn't.
It could be worse. You could have also decided to start a World Eaters army.
I didn't, so that's good.
I mean, it's fair to say that, you know, as expected, the 9th edition World Eaters Codex looks very much like what all the 10th edition indexes now look like in terms of the way it was played and built, which, funnily enough, was also very true of Chaos Demons.
Yes.
So we talk about how the points have changed and how everything is sort of like, you know, round numbered unit sizes and all the equipment's included for free. So it's just pretty much straightforward, like, you know, 150 points for this, you know, unit, 210 for this thing, blah, blah, blah. That's basically what the Demon Codex in 9th edition was anyway.
Right,
because
okay.
Demon units don't typically have war gear options in editions past. And the unit sizes in the 9th edition Codex got very prescriptive. It was like, Bloodletters are units of 10, no more, no less. You know, the only real options you had was the elite choice units, like Blood Crushers could be 3 to 6. You know, Beasts of Nurgle could be 1 to 3, and that was the only way you could sort of like maneuver the small points differences in your army list, because everything else would be like, well, Fleshhounds are a minimum of 5, so they're this much. You know, Bloodletters are 10. They will be 160 points. That's it. You know. So I almost got a bit used to that anyway with the 9th edition demons.
I mean, same. I mean, Guard towards the end anyway were, this is how many points you get for everything, regardless. Before the book came out, and it's now a paperweight. A
very nice looking paperweight.
Not bitter at all. In the slightest.
Don't get me wrong. In the end, and this one is on me, not so much on Games Workshop, but I only ended up actually playing 2 games with the 9th edition Demon Codex because I picked it up. This was like when rumors of 10th edition were starting to circulate, but we had no inclination that it was going to be an indexing situation.
Yeah.
So I was like, I picked up the book and the cards, and I was like, I'd started making work on building and painting my demon army, and I thought, I'll get around to playing with them for the first time in maybe 12 months time from now. I might have 1,000 points built and painted, and I'll play with it. And then Index, got announced that was going to be the case. I was like, right, well, I'm going to play some games with this book before it goes out. But that was on me. Like the demo book itself, I think it'd probably been out for maybe 10 months, before the indexing happened.
Yeah, I mean, Tony, you should feel privileged. You are one of 2 people I managed to get a game in with the new Guard Codex.
It was a fun game.
It was a fun game. But yeah, I didn't get a lot of time with it, which is a real shame because it was fun. Anyhow, what can you do?
So continuing like the other things that I do really like though and how what they've changed, especially when it comes to like thinking about how you make an army. I absolutely love having characters back in units again.
Yes, I know. That's so good. It's so good. Gone are the days where you go, right, I'm going to charge Captain so-and-so and his unit of what's and what. And then the unit goes in and the captain's just standing in the wind, just going, lads, we're gone. Lads, wait for me.
Yeah, or now you're having to daisy chain back 3 members of the squad to stay in aura range of the character who didn't make it into combat.
Yeah.
Like, I am...
I think the characters is one of the best rules they've done so far, just because you can't, unless you've got precision, you can't kill them until the last thing. It's the last thing, that's it, no discussion, unless you've got precision, done. Well,
yeah, like it's technically not even an option. Like the rules state you have to assign damage to the bodyguard models first.
Yep. Because I had that situation come up.
And I think the very clever change from... It's so simple but clever from back in the days of like 6th and 7th edition, where you would end up with Death Star units with lots of characters, is the fact that it's limited to 1 character per unit in most cases.
Yeah, there are a few, like Guard have... but it actually says in the rule, because I did look this up, that it is a hard cap limit of 2. You cannot have... That's in the rule book. You cannot have any more than 2 characters in a unit, regardless.
Designer's commentary or whatever it is.
No, it is in the rule book somewhere. I will have to check it, please. If I'm wrong, I don't care. But I'm pretty certain, because I looked this up for army construction, because you can take so many additional characters in a guard army.
Right.
So it's like, how many can I put into this? Oh no, no. I tell you where it came up, because there's a weird whether you can or can't with a Space Marine captain, lieutenant, and then something else like a banner or something.
Apothecary, I think, is the other one.
There's a few. There's a few different ones, but basically you can't. It's 2 max, so you can do whatever, which is good.
And I quite like how it typically seems to be that it's like, one sort of like head honcho leader character, like a captain, a chapter master, a war boss, those kind of equivalents, and then one like auxiliary support character, like an apothecary, a pain boy, a lieutenant.
Yeah.
So it's not like you've got a captain and a chief librarian, like jumping in the same unit.
Yeah. And the only sad thing is that there are some combinations where you think that would be cool, and you just can't do it. Like Terminator librarians, I'd like to have one additional character with, maybe, but that's a purely me selfish thing. I'd like to have an additional character with. It's not it breaks the game, but that's something that is worth looking at. Absolutely agree with you on that one. Couldn't agree more. Try to think what else there is that I like.
Well, so the other thing sort of on this point though that I really, really like, and it sort of harkens a little bit to the changes to warlord traits, relics, and specifically psychic powers. I love the fact that everything has a prescriptive loadout now.
Yeah.
Everything that typically was in the 9th edition codexes exist in the indexes somewhere. So, for example, in the case of the demons, they've got they had 18 psychic powers, because they had a psychic law per god minus con.
Yeah.
Actually, no, to be honest, they had even more, because they had the shadow discipline for Be'lakor as well. So they had 24 odd different psychic powers. Now, technically, you would probably see maybe 10 of them across all of them, because it'd be like, these are the 2 good ones, and then these are the 4 ones are mediocre. Or
these are the ones we needed to fill the book up with.
Yeah, exactly, right? Whereas now, those same 6 Tzeentchian psychic powers, they all exist by name across 6 different data sheets.
Yeah.
And in every instance, each one of those abilities tends to be really good or useful for the thing that has it. So, it's no more like, Treason of Tzeentch never got used. It was always Doombolt or, I can't remember the one, like War Blast or something.
Yeah.
Well, now, Carrios Fate Weaver has Warp Blast or whatever.
Yeah.
But now the Change Master or the Herald on Disc has Gaze of Fate, and the other one has Phantasmagoria, or so on. So they all exist. So even though the psychic laws are gone, and when you pick a psychic unit, you don't have options in terms of what powers it has. You've got the options in the index. If you want your Veil of Time or your Death Hex, rather than saying, this is my psychic, I'm picking that power, you go find the unit that has that ability and include that unit in your army.
So this is where we're going to end up disagreeing for the first time.
Ooh, go on.
I don't like the fact that the psychic phase doesn't exist anymore. And there's a reason for that. I have a reason. It's not just like me moaning because I want to moan. So I remember the heady days of 3rd edition. And this is, by the way, this is way better than 3rd edition Psychic Powers, because 3rd edition Psychic Powers, for those of you, ladies and gentlemen listening at home or watching on YouTube now, plugs, subscribe, like, whatever. In 3rd edition, you didn't have a psychic phase. It was the psychic power was instead of your shooting attack. That's why this is way better, because it's in edition 2. But the where I dislike the fact you don't have a psychic phase is that the buff and the I don't want to say nerf, but I mean nerf. What's the one where you
debuff?
What's the debuff? Yeah, buff and debuff powers basically don't exist. And what I mean by that is you don't have anything that it's all shooty powers. And yes, there are abilities that have the psychic keyword, but this is where it comes into my second point, which is there is no anti-psyker thing really anymore. But yes, you do get feel no pain saves against the shooting thing. But for example, if something had like a psychic ability that said that you, like for example, the Space Wolf Librarian of Phobos Armor you get stealth and -1 to hit and whatever. There's no way of nullifying that. There's no way of defending against that. So he always gets it, which is okay. But when you take things like Sisters and Silence and things that are supposed to be quite good at saying no to psychic powers, they kind of lose a bit of that, and that's where it falls down, and that's why I don't like it. But that's me just throwing my toys out, pro.
Well, yeah, as I say, it's interesting to sort of see that take on it, because yes, it is a big change, and overall I'm all for it. Like, I do like the simplicity of how psychic has been rolled into being more of abilities and keywords and special rules associated with weapons or abilities, mostly weapons.
Yeah.
And there are some examples, like you say, of units that get feel no pain against psychic attacks. Fleshhounds are one. They have a free up feel no pain against psychic attacks. So it's very, very hard to harm Fleshhounds with psychic weapons.
Yeah.
And in a way, that does open up some new tactical flexibility, because you can't opt to turn off psychic. Like, there are, so for example, some of the Eldar and Thousand Sun units, they have melee weapons that have psychic keyword.
Right.
Like, it doesn't specifically really do anything beneficial to them, because
it's definitely
psychic keyword itself doesn't. Yeah. I mean, there are pros and cons. Like the Thousand Suns, their detachment rule gives their psychic weapons a bonus rule.
Right.
So there are ways that it's tied into stuff, but also equally, if they try to hit Fleshhounds with their staffs, they've got the 3+3 pain against it. And it's interesting how certain detachments and rules do have abilities that, again, affect the psychic weapons in a way. So there's like the Thousand Suns stratagem, and there is a couple of demon units which make enemy psychic weapons hazardous.
Right, that's quite cool.
Yeah, so cool. Like if you're so close to the Infernal Enchantress, I think it is, she makes enemy units hazardous.
I'd like to see more of that. I don't think there's enough of that.
I think that's something that will come with the codexes, and will develop over time. Like, I think I think this is one of the things which will be influenced a little bit by the meta. Yeah. If psychic attacks and abilities become too prevalent, then in 18 months' time, we'll start seeing codexes that are releasing regularly with enhancements and stratagems and unit abilities that dampen or reduce or otherwise, counter psychic weapons and abilities. And it is true as well that this has been toing and froing for editions past. It has for a long time because, and it's come back to a situation where there isn't a specific psychic phase. It's a thing that typically takes the form of damage, like weapons, but not always. I remember, I think it was either 5th or 6th edition. I can't remember what yours specifically, but I think it might have been 5th edition because I think that's when the Demon Codex first came out as its own codex.
Yes, I think so.
Bloodthirsters had a collar of corn, which gave them a 2+ invuln against psychic attacks, basically. It's like if they were hit by a force weapon, or they were dealt damage by a psychic power, they had a 2+ invulnerable save against that damage, which is basically the equivalent of, you can't touch me. But Hive Tyrants, or Tyrannid Psychers as a whole, had the Paroxysm psychic power, which is just a malediction, as it was known, that meant that you hit on 6s in combat. So all these Hive Tyrants would have to do is cast Paroxysm on a Bloodthirster, and suddenly he goes from being like weapon skill 8 or whatever and hitting on 2s to basically hitting on 6s. And just rendering the Bloodthirster useless because he's never going to end up harming anything because you just can't hit it. Despite the fact he's supposed to have this ability that represents him being immune to psychic powers.
And this is what I mean about this iteration of psychic powers is it's not the shooting attacks that I have in it. Like I like the feel no pain against. That's great. Where it loses the sort of, and this purely from a narrative point of view more than anything, is where it loses me is the fact that I can't cast something on someone and then have the opportunity to try and have like a psychic duel with someone to stop it from happening, if that makes sense. And I know they've done it for ease of access and etc. But it's just a minor gripe.
And I get that. Like to my point is that these things are circular. Like this is nothing new. This has happened in decades past. Like I've been there before myself, being on the exact same side of this, thinking like, why is my Bloodthirster not immune to this when he should be? But I don't mind that because I think where it's ended up as a whole is a better place. Like, it's going to be impossible to come up with a mechanic that suits every situation perfectly, and I think that this is hitting 9 out of 10 marks most of the time, so I think it's really good.
And like you said, I'm hoping they bring in some more hazardous stuff, so it's like, this makes your powers, if your abilities hazardous. I'd be happy with that as a general rule. That's quite cool. I like that.
I mean, personally, I'm still undecided where I fall on the fact that a hazardous roll is one of the things you can use a command reroll on.
I'm okay with that because nothing is more disappointing than watching Mephiston blow himself up with a plasma pistol. And I know he doesn't die now, but having done it several times in previous editions, it's not fun.
But yeah, like I think I like how it's been executed though. I like the abilities spread across all the different units, because one thing that I think this has done a lot for is suddenly bringing life to a lot of models in the army ranges that just weren't seeing play.
Yeah.
Because suddenly the key ability for a certain unit, or the leader model that joins a particular unit, is the Infernal Enchantress that you never had before, or the Phobos Lieutenant, because you had some Phobos units, but you never had a specific Phobos Lieutenant to buff them because you had your Chapter Master buffs and so on. Which, by the way, before I forget, and I just want to make one little point that's been bothering me so much when in all these places that I keep seeing people online talking about how the Games Workshop previews lied to them about there being less rerolls in the game. Like, I was very particular about this point when they originally released that article because I knew people were misreading it, and instead, as a lot of people tend to do, reading what they want to read, not what's actually written.
Okay.
They never, like, as far as I could tell, they never particularly said less rerolls. What they said was less reroll auras. And
Okay.
there are a lot.
I mean, that is
reroll.
Very pernickety.
I know, right, and I get it. But
and I could take this from a point of view of that's been written in a particular way to make people think it's less rerolls.
But I get the point that they were trying to address.
Was
that in 9th edition, because 90% of rerolls came from aura abilities, and that because they were auras, they were affecting multiple units, which effectively ended up with entire armies having entire sets of rerolls, which is not what they have now. Basically, the only real units that have those abilities as an aura are the Supreme Commanders, things like Abaddon, Gulliman, the Lion. Like, at their level, they've got auras that are affecting multiple units, potentially with rerolls and similar abilities.
Yeah.
But in most cases...
But they should do, because they're Primarchs, or slash, uber villains.
But in the case of things like captains, or librarians, or war bosses, they're only giving their buff to the unit they're leading.
Yes.
And in their case, for various armies, it might be that it's a reroll. Fine. But it's not every single unit within 6 inches of that model, and therefore 5-6 units are getting rerolls. It's one unit. But it only bothers me because I remember thinking that when I read it, and like you say, obviously it might have been worded in a certain way to sound more grandiose than it was, but I did remember thinking, it's like, I noticed the fact they said auras, and then in the faction previews coming up, when people immediately start complaining, "Oh, this unit's got rerolls. This says this has got rerolls. This has got rerolls." Again, they said there'd be less rerolls. It's like, that's not what they said. They said less reroll auras.
Now that you've got that off your chest, Tony.
Yeah.
I could say it's like it felt like Angron's aura of rage just permeating through the screen.
I mean, maybe it's just because as an orc and demon player, I basically don't get those in 9th edition anyway.
Yeah. So I would like to add another positive, and then we can move on to the negatives if you want. Because I am aware of time. But so positives, love the universal stratagem / special rules. Thank God they're back. As in effectively the universal special rules. Because I was fed up of reading 300 different versions of the same rule in codexes with slight minor changes, which made no sense. But the reason why I think the stratagems are superb, having used rapid ingress, oh my goodness. So bless him if he's listening. Ben, sorry mate, I'm going to talk about the custodies that. I mean, he won the game, but he was using his custodies. He used their stratagem, which they have, which is something along the lines of they get sticky objectives for one unit or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And he was like, so I'm going to use this to do the sticky objectives. And I went, cool. And then he went, I'm now going to move away from the objective. Cool. I know. I'm gonna advance away from the objective. Cool. You do that. You finish your movement. Yep. All right. My terminators are going on the objective. What? Yeah. Oh no. Rapid ingress. Amazing. The other one I really like is the new Overwatch rule for being able to use that in the movement phase is amazing.
Well, I think the biggest change with that is the fact that you pick which unit is going to be doing the overwatching, and it's not just the thing that gets charged. It can be anything nearby.
Yep. The also big thing with that is mortars with Overwatch don't need line of sight, and on top of that, when they Overwatch, they always hit on 5s, no modifiers, unless they're within 6 inches of a platoon unit, and they always hit on 4s. with no modifiers. So
See,
I can fire my mortars every turn. Player turn.
Yeah. I mean, it costs you CP to do it, but yes.
Don't care.
And like for things like guard mortars, that's fine, and thematic, I think it makes sense. But I know there's already been some grumblings about indirect fire weapons that are substantially more impactful than a guard mortar. Being able to just overwatch at something anywhere whenever it moves.
So we are currently recording this after the points bump.
Yeah,
I think they weren't pointing properly. That would be my sort of take on that. I think you can't nerf indirect fire weapons anymore.
Yeah, to the point
otherwise, because they come pointless to use. And yes, I have massive biasness in this. I have a guard army, but you can't do it to a point where they just become absolutely pointless to use.
Yeah,
like you've already
what's the point?
Yeah. I think they just need to be pointed appropriately, and I still don't think they've been pointed appropriately. I think they're still too cheap, but
well, we will find out. But I have to say, one of the things that I've liked about the stratagems as a whole, both universal and a lot of the detachment ones, is the introduction of a lot more of these reactive stratagems.
Yes.
Like, obviously, things like Rapid Ingress, Overwatch, and Heroic of Intervention in its new 10th edition form.
Yep.
They're all more reactive play stuff than just I get tougher or better, at what I'm currently doing. And I think every detachment, most detachments have at least one stratagem that is kind of a out of phase reactive, ability for that army. And that's really, really nice to see.
So I absolutely agree, and the fact it keeps me doing in the game in my opponent's turn all four, that is good. Shall we move on to some negatives?
Well, I mean, I think we've hit a couple, but go on, let's hit some specific ones.
Go on. Right, first one. Stop putting secondary missions in the rules. I hate them. Can I just have a mission where it says, at the end of the game, if you control this objective, you win? Can I just have that? I just want that. For narrative play, I just want, here's some objectives, here's a couple of nice little special rules like fog or, Space Marines in their underpants, come on. Whatever, I don't care. Just stop using secondaries for narrative and say, yeah, it's for narrative or crusade. Stop it. I don't need it. I don't want to. If I want to do that, I'll play matched. I'm happy to do that. Just stop, please. Because I just want to, if I want to do a siege scenario, what I don't want to be interested in is whether I have claimed or shot particular units at a particular time of day on a Wednesday afternoon during, the summer solstice. I don't care. I'm trying to assault the walls. It's so immersion breaking and I hate it. Rant over.
Is it? You happy you got that off your chest?
Yeah, I've got that off my chest now.
Because I will say that as far as secondaries go for match play stuff, I do think incorporating the Tempest style equivalent of secondaries into what is now essentially GT missions, I think makes the actual strict match play stuff a lot more interesting.
Yeah, love it. And I'm not against secondaries. I want to make that clear now. I am not against secondaries. What I'm against is I'm assaulting this fortress. Oh, I've got to nip over there and claim that objective and plant a flower and eat some chocolate. I'm not interested. My objective is I'm trying to get over that wall. My objective's on the other side. That's my objective. End of the game. Oh, look, I've won. I'll even stretch to, you claim it in turn 2, you get a point. You claim it in turn 3, you get a point. You don't claim it in turn 4, you don't get a point. I'm happy with that. That's fine as well. Just stop trying to make me do other things while I'm immersed in assaulting a fortress or dropping onto a planet or defending a toilet from a carnifex. I don't care. Just stop it.
I can't tell if that was meant to be a Jurassic Park reference or not.
It could have been. I don't know. I'm so fed up, and I know why it feels like they're trying to appease the tournament players, but they're never going to play narrative stuff anyway. So just drop it and write a load of scenarios with just simple because that has two benefits. One, people grognards, is that it? Is that the word that you use?
Grognards.
That's the one. Old neckbeards like me can go, cool, I'll just play that game. But if you're a beginner, that's way easier to learn than I've got to take 5 points for putting on some underwear, and I've got 10 points for liking the colour blue, and 20 points because it's a Wednesday. I just... Right, yeah.
I mean, anyway. Admittedly, I think it's an interesting choice to have included secondaries as a component of the combat patrol format.
Yes, I think it should have been done very much in the case of...
Now, like I say, thankfully, and this is a positive, is that it seems like perhaps that narrative support for these kind of missions might be in the pipeline and might be on its way, because 12 months ago I was starting to lament the fact that seemingly the Crusade mission packs had stopped being a thing. Games Workshop wasn't producing them, and we started getting some Warzone books and Arcs of Omen and all the rest of it without specific Crusade support or things designated for narrative play. Now, admittedly, things like the entire boarding actions format arguably is narrative play, and for the most part, boarding actions doesn't have secondaries. That just has the go do this thing in each mission.
I've not played boarding actions just because I can't afford the scenery.
Time and financial investment.
It's not I can't afford the scenery. I just don't want to buy and pay. I have a Necromunda table. I don't really want to buy another set of walls that I have to paint. I don't want to.
But to that point, and I was genuinely really surprised when it was first announced, was the existence of the Crusade Tyrannic Warbook from day one.
It's so good.
Yeah, it is.
That's another positive. We got another positive, Tony. That's another positive. Tyrannic Warbook.
Well, I say, we're not typically very ranty, podcasts. We are very positive. And on the whole, I really enjoy 10th edition. I really enjoyed the releases. I like the indexing format, and I'm really, really pleased to see a Crusade supplement from day one. Here is support for Crusade,
and it's not a half-baked one either. It's got so if you haven't seen it, if you didn't pick up the Leviathan box, or you haven't got the Tyrannic Warbook, get the Tyrannic Warbook, because it's done in the same style / format as the Octarius books, and we like those. They were very good. I liked the Octarius books a lot because they had sort of campaign medals. They had skill trees, almost new battle scars and upgrades, and they've got all that in
legendary missions.
They're really it's really, really good. That is a definite plus point. I really like, and the background's really cool, and I want to know, Tony, I don't have a copy of the Tyrannic War book, and I know you do, but there's a lovely
that's because you've got a copy of the Leviathan.
I've got this is what I want to know. And I know, again, this is me being rubbish for podcasting, but there is a picture in the back of the Leviathan book, and I want to know what it is because it's big and scary and bug-like, and I don't recognise it, and I think it's one of the new NID units. And it looks like, I tell you what it looks like. It looks like the Queen out of Aliens when she's all like in a little cocoon thing, where she's sort of like all her arms are strung up. It'll be at the very back of the book if it's there.
No, there's
the last
nothing
page
specifically in here. No,
if
the
you've
last
got
page is literally indexes.
If you've got the Leviathan book, check out the last page. You'll know what I'm talking about because it looks. It's very cool. It's very cool.
There's some very nice, John Blanche artwork of the Emperor, as always.
I like the John Blanche. The legend.
Yeah, we hope he enjoys his retirement.
Yes. Good. Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, so I do want to make a point as well that when we say support for Crusade and talking about that being narrative play, I don't want it to come across as being that Crusade is the only way to play narrative.
No, it's not.
It's not at all. And
this is where I feel like if you want to play some decent narratives, this is what I mean about this is where my rant came from earlier. It comes from a place of love, which is there are some missions in previous editions going back that are superb, fun to play. They're not balanced. They're not balanced at all. But I'm thinking of some of the missions we played, like the Sandstorm one that we did, and with the retreat one. That's fantastic. Apart from the secondary, no, that doesn't have secondaries, did it?
It didn't.
No. So again,
secondaries.
No, it didn't have secondaries. It doesn't need.
Now, one of the things that is really good to mention is that all the missions in the Tyrannic Warbook, and if you have them, the Crusade packs from 9th edition, because for one thing, missions are still very much compatible. It's just about the actual mission formats of just be here, play on these objectives, score these points. That doesn't matter what format of game mechanics you're using for the game. 8th and 9th edition missions still work perfectly well with 10th edition.
And so do 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Well,
so
exactly.
You don't need to. Yeah. Sorry, Tony.
I totally get it. What I was going to say, Dan, was that I unearthed the other day at my dad's house a copy of the 4th edition Battle Missions book.
The best edition. It is fact. It's the best edition. You can fight me for it. I won't turn up, but it is the best edition.
you can fight you for it as long as you fight playing 4th edition rules.
Yeah, 4th edition rules. Because the cover rules. Oh, another positive. Love the new cover rules. They're almost 4th edition-y. That's why I like them. So yeah, I absolutely agree. You don't have to play the missions though. And I think as a community, we need to stop getting hung up on that, because I feel like that's very much come from the YouTube influencer type. And I am aware of the irony of this.
Well, I mean, that's why we're trying to showcase stuff on the channel here on YouTube with the battle reports that we use the missions and so on from Crucible of War, and the plan is to do some battle reports using Tyrannic War and the missions in there. I've a read through them. There are some really fun ones. But one of the things to mention about all sort of Crusade format missions is that they don't have secondary missions associated with them, because the intent with Crusade is your secondary missions are your agendas that you're picking in order to earn experience on units. Which means, if you want to play Crusade mission as a standalone game, you can do, and it's basically a thematic narrative mission with no secondaries, because you're not using the agendas.
Yeah, that's basic. That's how I would do it. Just don't bother with the agendas. And it would work fine. A lot of the missions are really interesting as well. And might I add, the Crusade, the mission special rules in the Crusade missions are really fun. They've got some weird sort of I can't remember. I think one of them is biohazardy, rotting, fleshy thing. It's one of the first missions in there, and it's you can't be near it. If you're near it, you can't use certain stratagems because of the smell or something along those lines. I can't remember. But I like that. I like anything funky to be able to make the mission a bit more thematic in that respect. I think that's quite good.
I mean, so the other thing worth pointing out is that as a channel and a podcast that has done deep dives into a lot of the Crusade and narrative content and so on throughout 9th edition, the Tyrannic Warbook it's in the mold of the Warzone books, but it is by comparison a relatively simple one, which makes sense because it's the first one of an edition and it's effectively the core rules for Crusade. So it isn't as complicated as some of the stuff that you got in Wars of Faith or Plague Purge and so like that. And actually, I do think some of the rules are interesting, but relatively tame in the sense that they are simple and straightforward. And that is good to start out with.
Are we going to mention my favourite thing, which is the Monster Hunters / Predator rules? I can't remember the wording of it, but you can basically you choose a skill tree and you can tailor your units to... and this is where the sort of like... So if you're familiar with the previous Warzone books, you would get a keyword each time you fought in that Warzone. So it's very much, I've noticed as well, and we mentioned this before, Tony, I don't know if it was on a podcast or just me chatting to you. I think the idea is, because it even tells you, and again, this might not be in the Tyrannic War, but it even tells you how to run an event. Which is like, wow. Like, if you want to do this it says, it even tells you how many games would be a good amount of games to play over an event. And it's not many. It's not many. It's less than I would have thought would needed to be. Like, so for example, going from the old Guard book, you would need to play, there was a bare minimum you would have to play before you could get any of the
accommodations
like because you had to win a certain amount as well as play a certain amount. And I think the minimum was like 5. Whereas this is very much a case of, I think, like, it's 1 game per player from my memory, which is I think 1 game per player is the amount of games that you're supposed to play, as in not 1 game per player, that's it, but each player has to play 1 game per number of players. So I think the idea is you play everyone at least once.
Yeah, it's essentially a round robin format.
Yeah.
But that's in Tyrannic War. Like, that is a little campaign system. But again, that is simpler than, say, the campaign system in Vigilus Alone, Rift War, and the other stuff by the end of...
especially like the Octarius one was like... I liked... Don't worry. Don't get me wrong. The Octarius campaign system, if you're used to running campaigns, was great.
Yeah, it was definitely... Yeah, it was not the starter campaign. It was this is for your 2nd or 3rd or 4th campaign.
Yeah. And I would still run that campaign. I would still... I would even potentially run both at the same time, so you could have the Tyranids have their own little thing in. But that would be another podcast, I think. I really, really like that. That is a big plus for me. This has turned... I was assuming we were going to talk about good things, bad things, but it's literally turned into, I like this! No, I don't like this! I don't like this! This is all right.
One thing then to sort of make sure we do touch on, because it is another key new component of 10th edition. Having played a couple of games, I played one myself, you said you played a couple. How are you finding Battle Shock?
Love it. Absolutely love it. There is one minor tweak I would quite like, but it's a personal thing, and apart from that, I love it. And actually, my personal tweak could end up ruining the whole balance of the game. But I wish it lasted for the whole turn. And the reason I wished it lasts for the whole turn, and by turn I mean not just, I don't mean the player turn, I mean literally the whole turn.
The battle round.
Yeah, the whole battle round. Is because you could pick... So, for example, I'll give you an example of where it doesn't really affect anything. Your opponent in their turn shoots a vehicle with a unit inside. Cool. Okay. They get out, they're battle shocked. Ooh, that's bad. Yes, it is bad. It's your turn now, they're fine.
Yes. Yeah, I get that, because if that unit's not below half strength,
Yeah, they don't. They automatically just become.
Again.
Yeah. Now I get it for stratagems and things like that, but a lot of the time it's you've blown up a vehicle and now they're just okay. They can't claim that objective, but they can claim it from my reading, and I could be wrong. But as soon as it gets to your turn, they're fine. They claim the objective.
Yes, essentially. That is the one thing as well, which I feel like I'm not sure whether I do or don't like the sequencing on it, because, like you say, it feels like anything that your opponent does to try and force out of phase battle shock seems, at first, on the face of it, less impactful, because it doesn't matter if I make you take a battle shock in my turn. Like, so say you're on an objective, and my plan is to run up to that objective, and I don't intend to kill your unit because maybe it's super tough, and it's a bunch of Deathwing Terminators or whatever. Like, just something that's I'm not going to kill.
Yeah.
So my plan is, well, if I battle shock it, then you can't hold the objective. So all I have to do is run up, and then I have it. Hooray me! But it doesn't really work like that, because if I have to, as with most missions in 9th and 10th, if the scoring is I score at the start of my command phase, if I battle shock you and I control the objective in my turn, that's fine. But as soon as it passes to your turn, your unit is then not battle shocked again. Which means they still control it in their turn to score their points. And by the time it gets back around to my command phase, I don't control it.
So I have a fix. I have a fix that would be a fair fix. If you are battle shocked, you have to make another test. You don't automatically.
So if you're below half strength or
if you're battle shocked at the start of the turn, you have to make another battle shock test, because then
interesting. Yeah.
Then you've still got the option of passing, but also there's that potential of you not passing, and then battle shock becomes a real problem for things.
So I found that the two places where battle shocking out of phase is really useful is, one, any mission where the scoring is done at the end of your turn. Because that does work then. I battle shock your unit, I run up onto the objective, I score at the end of my turn. Great. I don't care if you take it back in your turn. I've scored because it's end of turn scoring. Which does mean as well, it does have play in the 5th turn for the player going second.
Yes.
You can battle shock your opponent's units and score at the end of your turn in a mission.
But again, I'm fine with that. That's quite cool. That makes it very sort of like, oh no, that's dangerous.
It's the crucial moment. It's the final push, and so on. But the other thing that makes it really good is for the whole they can't use stratagems on them.
Yes.
Which at first, obviously, you think like, okay, cool, so maybe they can't, use Armor of Contempt, or they can't give themselves exploding sixes in combat this phase or whatever. You're like, okay, great, But the big thing, and this became evident to me when this happened in my game, was as a melee orientated army. I charged 2 enemy units with my Khorne Demons. And I had some Plague Bearers who went in as well. And I had the Sloppity Bile Piper. Who, his ability is that at the start of the fight phase, all enemy units within 6 inches of him have to take a battle shock test.
Right.
And what happened was the unit he was in combat with failed their battle shock test and therefore couldn't use stratagems on them. Which suddenly meant there wasn't going to be a counter-offensive strategy being used on them.
Absolutely great.
That was huge for me, because I was like, right, I've charged 2 target units, and this is like early terms of the game, people have got CP, it was into 2 big units of 20 Orc Boys, and all of a sudden, Dan couldn't use counter-offensive to just pick whichever unit I didn't pick first to clobber, and actually, even though it didn't have anything to do with objectives that turn, the fact that I battle shocked this 20, boy mob of orcs meant that they didn't just turn around and clobber the Plague Bearers and the Bloodletters before they got to swing.
I agree that that's where it's useful. There is that. I just think that some like either something it lasts for the full turn, or as I said, if you're battle shocked already, you have to take another battle shock test to become unbattle shocked.
Yeah,
would be good. Just because then it's like it really makes a difference. Oh, can we all have a cheer that orcs now can actually be played because of the morale working? Hooray! That's a good thing.
Yeah, actually, to be fair, this is one other small thing as well that I really like, is the fact that for me personally anyway, and the way I play the game, and I mostly play like fun narrative missions and so on.
Yeah, right. We all know about 3 Dakar Jets, Tony.
I own one Dakar Jet. I own one Dakar Jet, and I only ended up taking 2 to that event, and that was an invitational.
Whatever.
And I came second with a Gorkanaut list.
No, it was 2. So, yeah, two Dakar Jets, Tony. That's your name.
No, the final list had 1. I had 1 Wasbot. In the end, that was it. Ask Chris, I played him. He brought a freaking Lancer Knight to that game, and my Gorkanaut punched it out. But that aside, is the fact that the general rules of the game, there isn't much to de-incentivize big unit sizes now, like there has been for the majority 8th and 9th. And that's for 2 reasons. One, the change to blast, in the sense that even 5-man units are giving up an extra shot to blast weapons. So when you look at taking units like Orcs or Termagants or Guard and things that can be units of 20, you're only actually giving up between 2 to 3 extra shots at most against blast weapons.
Whereas previously it would have been like, oh, you're now shooting everything at me. Oh, yay.
Whereas before it'd been you roll 2d6 and you get any number versus just getting 12.
Yeah.
Now it's just, X amount plus 5 or plus 6. But even if you were the minimum 10-man unit, it would still be plus 2. So the difference is only like, let's say, 2 to 3 extra hits. So it's not actually like you're suffering massively from that.
No.
And then secondly, there's far less objectives in the game, both in missions and in the secondaries, that require you to do actions.
Yay.
So there's less need for these like action monkey units and taking everything in minimum sizes because you're giving up.
I was never sold on actions. I like them in I like them in narrative games if you are well if
you're arming the bomb or turning off the shields.
You're turning off the shields, or you're arming the bomb, or you've got a GM.
Not investigating signals in the 4 different table corners.
Yeah, that seems... Oh, I hate that rule. I like that. And actually the actions... So in the objectives and the scenario special rules, they're very much... The actions are inbuilt to... If you're here and you don't shoot, you can do this, which is much better than what it was, because it became again quite difficult to remember what you were doing, which unit is it was getting a bit silly.
And then additionally, the fact that large units are actually the best way to get the most out of your buffs and characters now.
Yes.
Because the leader units means that typically characters are only buffing 1 unit as opposed to multiple. And you get more out of having 1 20-man unit getting the buff than... No, sorry. It's better for the game. It's better for the game that you get 20 models in 1 unit get a buff than have 40 models all get a buff, because each one of them has 1 member of their unit telling it within 6 inches of a character.
Going, I'm here now.
So it's like, technically you're getting less buff than in the Days of Auras, but the point is that's on 1 20-man unit rather than 10 5-man units.
Yep, absolutely.
So I actually feel like taking mobs of 20 boys and so on, or 20 guardsmen, or 20 gaunts, or whatever, is worth doing, and I actually like seeing that on the table. Again.
Which is why I'm now working on getting... how many guardsmen was it at last point? Count? A lot. There's a lot more guardsmen on the way. A lot. And because they're all separate, that's the hilarious thing. Because they're all separate data sheets, I can take 120 Cadians, 120 Deathcore, 120 Catachans, not that they're awful, models and rules, and 120 bog standard infantrymen, and it still probably doesn't come to 2,000 points. It doesn't, because it's not. It's like 400 or something. Yeah, it is.
Here's an interesting point then to sort of like start bringing things to a close for tonight, at least. Give us a few little like personal winners and losers in terms of unit compositions and projects. So I'll give you some examples.
Okay.
So, for me, as an orc player, and as I imagine many orc players have done recently, for the first time ever, I bothered to paint my run turd.
Yeah.
He's now a required part of Gretchen units.
And toughness 5 Gretchen in combat.
I mean, yes, but I think that's another side.
If anyone thinks that that's not getting FAQ'd, you don't know how this works. It's just...
So the fact that, you know, Gretchen require a runt herd model now as part of the unit, which makes sense because it comes in the box, and you know he's not an attached character; he's just a member of the unit.
Yeah,
but I better get my runt herd built and painted now. Then,
I've got one. Sorry, Tony. After you.
Well, I was going to say the other one is generic mech boy, not big mech with force field, but just mech boy is one that is now just like, oh, need to build and paint a mech boy because I need that +1 to hit ability on units that only he gives out.
I've got another one, but it's a slightly different reason, and it is orcs again. The squig boss, not the big war boss, but the knob, which comes in the box. Yes. Which was an independent character for some strange reason, is now with the unit, which made no sense previously, but it's now with the unit. So you can charge with the unit that you get a box of, which why they made him separate, I don't know. But,
yeah, he now leads the unit.
I'm trying to think of other things that
Here's one though that I'm very sad for within the orc range.
Yep.
That is the poor tank busters.
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah, going from being a 5 to 15 man unit option, where everyone simply has a rocket launcher, now being a prescriptive 5 man only unit.
That's,
where one of them has to have rocket pistols and one of them has to have a tank hammer.
Yeah, they're rubbish.
It's such a shame. It's not only the fact that it makes the unit useless, but also how many people actually have tank buster units that had the rocket pistol tank hammer?
No, because they were awful. Like they look awful. Like there's several reasons why you didn't have them.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, they look awful. 2, you could only take 1, I think, anyway previously. So I can't remember, but it was better off. That is sad. For me, I've not got too many units like that. I'm trying to think.
I will give you my last one as well, because I'd say this I understand is a acceptable necessity of indexing, and the way they've changed units and so on. But for me, Death Killer Wartrike, because he is a leader unit now. He's not like a vehicle that's designed to be resilient enough to run around on its own.
Yep, he goes in a unit of bikes now, doesn't he?
Yeah, the only thing he needs is war bikes. Guess what I do not own?
Oh no! I've got 2 boxes of them.
I don't own any war bikes.
Because you have to buy some now. You do need to.
Me, he used to run around with the buggies. Like, he ran around with the boomdackers and the scrapjet and so on. And now, if I put him on the table, he'll probably just get shot off the table.
Okay, so I can tell you why I don't have many. It's because they got rid of a lot of the units that I've already had this process happen in the previous book. If that makes sense. So, some example, Weird Vein Psychers. I've got tons of Weird Veins. Well, I've got a unit of 6. Can't use those anymore, so I rebase them, and they're Primaris Psychers now, so...
Yeah, lots of
I've got enough of those. The other thing. Oh yeah, no Sad Panda, no conscripts. However, again, this is where you can find workarounds. Okay, so people try and find workarounds. Don't get sad. Get workaroundy. So I've got get inventive. I had lots of conscripts. It was fun. They are now my infantry platoon. So they are. I just use them as they're not Cadians. They just are the infantry platoon. So they look like White Shield. They're just White Shield. Yep.
They're too green to be Cadians. Like they've not learned the discipline yet.
Yep. Another example of a workaround, which I was quite proud of myself for thinking of this one, is in the Leviathan box. There is a really cool lieutenant with Tyranid bits on, and he's his own thing. And if you read his rules, he's very fun. He's got like. Effectively he's got loner, so he can't be shot with it over 12 inches. He makes a brilliant lone wolf for Space Wolves.
Oh, that's cool. Yes, I can see that.
Yeah, so that was another cool idea. So if you've got any lone wolves and you think, as long as they're in power armor, yes, I know there will be people with ones with thunder armor, but
yeah. And admittedly, I've also been looking for my own workarounds. So for example, I have a unit of 5 tank busters, but they're all armed with rockets.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if that box gets redone next, because it's the only Finecast one left for them. Like a main box. I mean, I don't mean characters, I mean unit box.
I was going to say, there is the weird boy at least, but he's not a unit. He's a character. You're right. I think the tank busters are probably the only one, because it was them and the commandos were kind of the last holdouts.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they either become a kill team or whatever.
Yeah.
Can we have a minute silence for Wolfen, please? They're terrible. Wolfen. They're just terrible. They're not even worth taking as a cheap chaff unit. They're just rubbish.
Well, just wait till Levan Russ comes out of the warp in sometime in the next 12 to 18 months, and then there'll probably be a whole detachment for Wolfen that'll come with him.
Yep, with a great big bushy beard.
And then there'll be some meme somewhere about him standing there with the lion, facing down Tyranids or something they've never seen before, and he'll be like, "Never thought I'd be here dying with the lion."
How about that of a friend? Don't push it.
But yeah, so for me, the tank busters, like what I'm doing with them, the 4 boys with rockets, they're just going to go in my boy mobs. Like they're just going to fill out my bodies to bring my units up to 20. And I don't mind having 2 boys who probably won't fire the rocket that often, because any turn they advance, they can't fire it. Fine. But any turn they don't advance, I can just fire off a rocket at, some opportunity target, and it might do some damage. And particularly, little things like the Big Mech, who now gives reroll 1s to hit.
Oh, that's cool.
Rockets in his unit, they get little rerolls. And then the Knob, who's got a rocket launcher, he's now, for the meantime, until Codex comes along and potentially changes it, he's going to act as a spanner in my Burner Boy mobs.
Nice. I like that.
Because the spanner has either a custom Mega Blaster, a big shooter, or a rocket launcher.
Oh, nice. Oh, that works.
He's basically just going to be like the leader unit for my... And I happen to have 4 Burner Boys now. Like, I have 4 Orc models with Flamers. So, by putting him in as the spanner, I can actually field a unit of Burner Boys.
That's really cool. I like that.
So, I found little inventive ways.
Yeah, you can... That's the thing. You can make workarounds. Like, I added in some sergeants, some Voxes to the White Shield. And now they work as... It is doable. It's a pain, but don't chuck your models away just because GW told you to. Work around it. Count as. I mean, this edition, if anything, I would be very. I'm going to throw this out here, Tony. I think this edition, more than any other edition, promotes counts as, because of the sheer amounts of. Well, it's like Terminators. They have accursed weapons. What does that mean? Anything you like. Yeah. Cool. All right. And that's what I mean. It's very much, counts as, because there's all sorts of things going on.
Heirloom weapons and
Yep.
And to be fair, another sad one for orcs is the all the combi weapons becoming what are now the new versions of combi weapons.
Yep.
It's terrible for orcs because we actually have to roll to hit now.
Yep. Because they don't get scored. Oh, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, an orc combi scorcher isn't a scorcher. It's now a one-shot ranged weapon that hits on a 5.
No, that's not good. That's bad.
It is bad. I feel bad for one of our regular attendees at the Crucible of War has his 10-man unit of combi scorcher knobs that used to go around napalming everything.
And not anymore. He doesn't.
No, he doesn't. Not for the meantime. I mean, again, he might just repurpose them as a fancy unit of burner boys.
Yep. Oh, Tony, can you hear that? Yeah, that's the world's smallest violin playing for all the Space Marine players who lost their Horus Heresy options. Oh no. Oh, sad. Don't care. And this is another thing with Legends, right? People have got it in their heads that you can't use them anymore. Who said that? You can't use them in competitive events, and I get that people play them in. People use match play as the sort of like standard. So basically, what was really odd is they said yes, loads of things are going to Legends, and it was only the heresy stuff and demons for some reason. So all my guard stuff, which I was expecting to go into Legends, didn't go into Legends. But I had
heard that it seemed to have come down surprisingly harsh on Space Marine players.
Yes, that's what I mean. It's all the Space Marine stuff went into Legends, which I can see if you're a Space Marine player and you play competitively, that might be upsetting. But if you play narratively, then fill your boots. Play as many Leviathan. Yeah, I mean, I would play any. But if someone came to your event, Tony, and bought their Heresy Death Guard or Heresy Space Wolves, and they wanted to use it, and they wanted to play like, I want to play my Heresy Marines against Orcs and Eldar and Tyranids, I'd be like, go for it. Bring all the Leviathans and all the thing. That would be fun. I'd be all right with that.
We had someone bring I think it was a 7 Dreadnought list to First Crucible, but every Dreadnought was a different chassis of Dreadnought.
Nice. See, that's fine. I there is a Legends bit, and then there's a Forge World bit. So technically, and as I was explaining, we were chatting before the podcast, and I said that if you're going to, there's an event in Canterbury run by my mate Dan, which I don't know the name of it, but because Titans are not legendary units, I can take one to a tournament.
Yes. So admittedly, I know that is still a thing.
Yep.
All the Adeptus Titanicus units in 40k were still playable because I suppose the argument is they still exist in the 41st millennium. They're not gone from the heresy era sort of thing.
The other thing is with that, this is another plus actually. I like the fact that the Titans are pointed appropriately now. Because previous editions, they just went, they're 2,000 points. Are they, though?
They get it. a bit like with the original Forge World Greater Demons, where it's just the common is 888 points.
Why? Because I said so.
Yeah. Predictably, the most broken one was the Sneshi one because it was only 666 points.
Yeah, so I like that. That's so... Yeah, I'm going to be going to an event with a Warhound for lols.
Well, I mean, as a whole, I'm really looking forward to playing more 10th edition. I've not had a chance to play a lot of games. Well, I haven't had a chance to play plural games yet, but I will do very soon. And I'm looking forward to trying out units and upgrades and leaders and enhancements, and in the near future, detachments. I would love to think that if right now orcs have the War tribe detachment right now, where the army rule is simply all your melee attacks have sustained hits 1. I would love to see a Daka tribe detachment where it simply is all your ranged attacks have sustained hits 1.
1. Yep.
That's
or a speed freaks. I can see speed freaks being a detachment. I can see
all your weapons gain assault.
Yep. I can even see things like a stomper, not stomper, a dread mob, which is all dreads, and it's got no other detachment rules except for all dreadnoughts, killicans, and gorkanauts and morkanauts get the battle line keyword. That's it. There's no additional rules to it. It's just you get back, so you can take more.
And then obviously you can get 6 specific
stratagems and but that's fine because you're not piling on.
Yeah,
like you're not getting the extra attacks and stuff. I mean, I'm okay with because you're just having that one rule for the detachments. My worry is that they go, here's 6 rule on this one detachment. That would be. I hope they don't do that. I hope they keep it to one rule.
I mean, yeah, my guess is, I think the example of the most complicated detachment is probably the Space Marines one. The actual combat doctrines is probably the one with the most layers to it as a pure.
That's the army rule, though, isn't it?
No.
Oh no, the army rule is oath of moments, isn't it? Yeah.
Like, because that one effectively is like 3 mini rules in one.
Yes.
And 50% of the stratagems also relate to what state of the the thing you're in. Now, some armies, there's pretty obvious options for what they're going to do, and some are really unknowable and interesting. So, for example, the Tau currently have one option, which is Kaiyun. So it's pretty obvious there's going to be...
I wonder what the other option will be, or one of the other options. Or Farsight Enclaves, or Enclaves, depending on where you're from.
If they bring in... I cannot remember the Tau word for it, but if they bring in the third tenant, which is the Patient Hunter... No, so not Patient.
No, that's...
the Lone Hunter.
Oh!
Could you imagine if the detachment rule was simply all characters have Lone Operative?
That would be cool. I'd like that.
But, so that, for example, seems quite knowable. Like, it's obvious that they've only got Kaiyun now, they're going to get Montcar at least as another option.
Yeah. And likewise...
It seems obvious to be Speed War.
Yeah. And like Guardsman is regimental detachments. So, you want a mechanized force, here's a mechanized force. Oh, you want an artillery force, here's an artillery force. Oh, you want a tank-driven force, here's a tank-driven force.
But then on the opposite end of the scale, I think there are some armies that are going to be really interesting to see what they do with them otherwise, because one that I think I will either absolutely love or be very sad about, depending which way they go with it, is the Chaos Demons. Because right now, their detachment is just like, it's like warp breach or warp assault or something. And basically, the detachment rule is just, they can deep strike 6 inches rather than 9.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's quite a cool rule. Yeah.
But what else do you do, or could you do with demon detachments without just going, without just going God.
I was going to say God specific.
Without just going, here's the Khorne one, here's the Zinch one, here's the Nurgle one, here's the Snake.
I genuinely think that's all they'll do with them. I think it will be.
Yeah.
I think what they'll do is Khorne. I reckon 5 is a good amount, right? So you've got Khorne, Slanesh, Nurgle, the other one, Zinch, and then you have Be'lakor.
Yeah.
As your 5th. And then that's it.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see where Vashtor lands in 10th edition.
Oh, that could be sick. Yeah, I mean, which faction is he in at the moment?
Well, at the moment he's technically in Chaos Space Marines.
Right. Okay.
But is he going to be CSM? Is he going to be Demons? Is he going to be
I think he'll be CSM because of the Demon engines. That would be my thought on it.
Yeah.
Because
it's interesting to see. I know they're probably going to do one of each god, but in a non-prescriptive world, like in a world where, technically speaking, Blood Angels don't have to be Blood Angels. Do you know what I mean? Like, anyone can use the Blood Angels.
Oh yeah, they could do like something like Demonic Incursion.
They could do something like, this is the really aggressive demon.
Yeah, or
this is the really
Demon World. Demon World. It's a Demon World detachment, or any of those would work. Demon Host is that? Yeah, that might be cool.
where you've actually, the idea is your army hasn't come through a warp rift, it's actually been bound to mortal vessels, and it has now emerged at this point as an army by bursting out all of its mortal,
I mean, that's interesting thought. The NID ones, I could see them doing the different stages of a Tyranid invasion.
Yes.
So Vanguard, Assault Beasts, Monsters, that kind of thing. The one I'm interested in is what they do. Because what I don't want them to do, and this kind of sits with what you've just said about the Godspeed, what I don't want them to do is them to do sub-faction specific data sheets. So I don't want them to do here's an Ultramarines one, here's an Imperial Fists one, here's a Black Templars one, because what I want them to be able to do is I want you to be able to, and less so for the Marines, but for say something like Orcs, for example, I want to keep it so generic that I can paint my Blood Axes as Blood Axes and my Goths as Goths and have them in the set, because I have an Orc army planned, which is going to be...
You think you'd rather have a Speed War and a Beast Snagger tribe than a Evil detachment and a Snakebite detachment?
Yes. Yeah. Because I want my Orc army to look like the United Colours of Benetton. I want it as many colours. That's the problem I find with Orc armies, is they're not colourful enough.
They're not a rainbow.
They are. They should be all... Look, there's the yellow ones and there's the blue ones. And where are the purple ones? I can't see them. Oh, there they are! You know, that kind of thing.
Don't get me started on purple orcs.
But yes, that's my opinion on that. I think we've covered everything. Have we covered everything? I'm trying to think, is there anything else?
I think we've come to a good natural sort of conclusion for tonight anyway. So, yeah, so that is generally what a little bit of what the Narrative Wargamer podcast is sometimes going to be like now. Probably most of the time. We've got, let's say, a few things planned for like fun facts episodes. Will still be coming back and so on. But it's been nice. It's been more casual, more just a conversation.
I've enjoyed it.
It's nice. And I'm hoping that this format lets us get these out a bit more regularly, and actually we can do this a lot more. And it's just a nice chance to, sit and chat hobby without being so prescriptive about reviewing a book or a codex or a new release. I mean, we have talked a little bit about like the Tyrannic War book tonight.
Yeah, I still think there's room. Yeah, I still think there's room to do that, but in a more casual way, almost like a casual conversation.
It's almost like I had a good idea a year ago. Now I'm deciding to implement it. So yeah, thank you very much to those of you listening. Thank you very much to those who are watching over on YouTube. And if you are there, then please do give us a like and subscribe. And you'll be
and hang on, I've got to help you out here because they've got that dingly dong notify thing. Because if you don't do the notify thing, it doesn't actually send you any. The YouTube gods like hate you and put you in some sort of YouTube purgatory. So do the all notifications as well, Tony. Sorry, hate to butt in there, but
don't forget. That's right. Yep, Dan's public service announcements to avoid YouTube purgatory. Make sure you click the dingly dong.
Yep.
But yeah, in addition to doing all of that, we do have a Patreon. You can go support us over there. It helps us produce the show. It helps towards equipment for things like the battle reports and a number of the publications that we can then do reviews for and everything else, because lo and behold, we're not on the previewers list. We don't get free stuff sent to us. So
shocking.
Our Patreons help us a lot in that regard. And you can also support us by going and using the affiliate link below to go to Element Games and buy all your hobby stuff from them, because that way we get a little kickback, and again, it just helps support the show. And for those people on YouTube, you will have already been able to see our socials handles and where you can go find us. But Dan, where can people find you?
On Instagram at Garage Hobbit is exactly how it sounds. Look me up. I've just finished building a Warlord Titan, which was hard. So yeah, at Garage Hobbit on Instagram.
And as always, I am at Narrative Wargamer on pretty much all platforms, but yeah, that is where I am on Instagram and here on YouTube. So thank you everybody for listening, and I think that's everything for now. So without further ado, I think we cue the outro music, the probably once again new outro music.
Outro music of the Narrative Wargamer. We have war games and narrative and outro music.
And clipped. So, yeah. Until next time, guys, which hopefully will be very soon again, hopefully. Then, this has been the Narrative Wargamer Podcast, the new Narrative Wargamer Podcast, helping you to discover yet more ways to play 40k.